Hi everybody, I'm David, and this is part 4 of Sin, the Christian Idol. In this video, I kind of want to dive in deeper into what the law is and just how severe it is to break one commandment. You've heard me speak about focusing too much on the law, and by doing this, being law-minded, it takes us away from the grace that Jesus offers. And this is why I kind of want to dive in a little deeper, because just so you can kind of get a good idea of how hard it was to live by works and not by faith and by the Spirit. So the Jewish laws of the Old Covenant are broken up into two different pieces. You got 613 laws. 248 were positive commandments. There were acts you were supposed to perform. You have 365 negative commandments of acts you were supposed to abstain from. Now, I'm going to kind of break those down, but not too much, because you got 613 laws. It would take forever for me to go through that. But I kind of want to break it down into sections. So bear with me, here goes. You got 10 laws that are just based on God, just God alone. 10 laws. You got 6 laws based on the Torah. 5 laws based on signs and symbols. 4 laws for prayer and blessings. 14 laws for love and brotherhood. 13 laws for the poor and unfortunate. 6 laws for treatment of Gentiles. 23 laws of marriage and divorce and family. 26 laws for forbidden sexual relations. 36 laws for times and seasons. 27 laws for dietary things. And you have 14 laws for business and practices. 19 laws for employment of servants and slaves. You get 7 laws for vows, oaths, and swearing. You get 17 laws for the sabbatical practices and for the Jubilee year. 36 laws for the judicial procedures. You got 4 laws for injuries and damage. 11 laws for property and property rights. You got 7 laws for criminal laws. You got 24 laws for punishment and restitution. 3 laws for prophecy. 46 laws for idolatry, idolaters, and idolatrous practices. 7 laws for agriculture and animal husbandry. And then you got 3 laws for clothing, 4 laws for the firstborn, 30 laws for the Levite practices. You got 24 laws for the tithes and taxes. You got we got 33 laws for the temple, the sanctuary, and sacred objects. You got 101 laws for sacrifices and offerings. You got 16 laws for ritual purity and impurity. 4 laws for the lepers and leprosy. 7 laws for the king. 10 laws for the Nazarites, and 16 laws for war. Now, that's 613 laws. Now, there's also 7 laws that were added later on during the time of when Rome kind of took over Israel, and the rabbis came in. So you got 7 rabbinic laws for the rabbis, which makes 620 laws. So those are the additional laws that were brought up that a lot of people kind of argue about, saying, well, Jesus came just to deal with those laws. There's only 7 laws added, and they're all dealing with rabbis, and the rabbi practices and stuff like that. So there's not really a big change, except for just 7 additional laws. But we all know that the 613 laws were summed up into 10 commandments, which were written on stone. You will have no other God before me. You shall have no graven image. Do not take the Lord's name in vain, which is not the whole GD word, which is not a nice thing to say. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, oh, go ahead and say the GD phrase because it's okay. But we all say, oh, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. That means don't say GD. But that's not entirely true. God is not God's name, for one thing. Second of all, we do have the name of Yahweh, so, or Yahweh, whichever way you prefer to say it. But it's pretty much based on how you act. If you say, I am of Yahweh or Yahweh, but I'm going to act differently, that's taking his name in vain. That's taking God's name in vain. So the fourth commandment is, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Then you honor your mother and your father. Do not kill, which we know that Jesus says hate is equal to murder. Do not commit adultery. Jesus says lust is the equal to adultery. Do not steal. Do not lie, and do not covet, which means don't envy. But we know that even stealing and coveting or envying is the same, because if you're coveting or envying somebody, you have stolen in your heart. Jesus does not say this, but it is implied that if hate is equal to murder, lust is equal to adultery, then wouldn't envying be equal to being a thief? So, but let's go ahead and look at James chapter 2. I kind of want to take a look at this, and I'm going to read a little bit of it, start with verse 8. That way you can kind of get a feel of what I'm saying here. It says, indeed, if you fulfill the royal law prescribed in the scriptures, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing well. If, however, you show favoritism, you commit sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. For whoever keeps the entire law and yet stumbles at one point is guilty of breaking it all. For he who said, do not commit adultery, also said, do not murder. So if you do not commit adultery, but you murder, you are a lawbreaker. Speak and act as those who are to be judged by the law of freedom. For judgment is without mercy to the one who has not shown mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. I mean, let's take a look at this here for a second. It says that if you keep the law, love your neighbor as you love yourself, which is one of the commandments that Jesus gives as one of the greatest commandments. But it says you show favoritism, you're a transgressor. That's some pretty deep stuff. I know, and please don't get me wrong, but us as Christians, and I myself have been able to do this, we kind of break this law a lot. I mean, Jesus says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And when Jesus says this, we know Jesus ain't saying the guy that lives next to you. He's saying anyone on the face of this planet is your neighbor, because we're all on this globe together. So let's think of it. If we favor somebody over somebody else, Jesus says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. You have broken this law. We do this with nations. We do this with types of people that we see to be less worthy than others. We do it in church all the time. I've done it. We intend to favor someone over somebody else. Showing favoritism, it's not anything new. I mean, Jacob did it with Esau. Jacob favored Esau over, Isaac favored Esau over Jacob, my bad. And Rebecca favored Jacob. Jacob ends up favoring Joseph and Benjamin over the rest of the brothers. And so, I mean, and we all know that the sisters were never really thought about, too highly, because they were just property at the time. So, I mean, there's a lot of this that was going on even before the law and even after the law. And so we know that favoritism is a pretty evil thing in the sight of God. And it happens even today in churches, and no one thinks anything about it. But guys, that's being a transgressor. If we are going to live by the law, we got to live by the entire law. James is saying that right now. Thank God, if we lean on grace and the grace that Jesus offers in the unmerited favor, that we know that mercy triumphs over judgment. And how great a thing is that? So we know that if we just know that we can't do this on our own, that it takes the mercy of God for us to even thrive in this world, to thrive in the sight of God. We know that it's Jesus. Jesus is the only way, and what Jesus has done is the only thing that's going to get us through. So, also kind of want to look at the rest of this. He talks about, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but does not the works? Can such faith save him? So we know that now he's talking about faith without works is dead. This is pretty much what the rest of the passage is. Continuing through verse 14 through 20, we know that he's talking about works, and if you don't have works to show your faith, you pretty much are, it doesn't count. It's dead. Now we say, okay, so now what? Are we going back to works now? Are we done with faith? Or are we done with grace? Are we going back to works? What is James talking about here? Now, let's look at Galatians real quick. I want to try to get through this as quick as possible. Galatians talks about, in chapter 5, starting with verse 1, it says, "For freedom Christ sets us free. Stand firm, then, and don't submit again to the yoke of slavery. Take note, I, Paul, am telling you that if you get yourself circumcised, Christ will not benefit you at all. And I testify to every man who gets himself circumcised that he is obligated to the entire law." Now we know that he's not talking about, we know that circumcision has a lot more to do than just circumcision, because it stands for a lot of things in those days. But right now these guys were being taught that they have to do this in order to be saved. But Paul is talking about more than just circumcision here. He's talking about the entire law. But circumcision was just one of the main topics that he's talking about. He's saying, don't go back to the yoke of slavery. Don't go back to the way things were before Jesus gave his life for us. Look forward, go forth, don't go back. He's saying, stand firm in the faith that we have in Jesus Christ. And that, first of all, is part of the works he's talking about, by resting in what Jesus Christ has done. For he says, and so he's repeating this again, "You who are trying to be justified by the law or alienated from Christ, you have fallen from grace." So going back to the law means you have fallen from grace. And how crazy is that? So, and of course, we know that right here in Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46, he's talking about what you do for the least of these, you've done it for me. Now we're wondering, what is Jesus Christ talking about here? This is part of the works that James is talking about. You know that whole sermon that Jesus is preaching pretty much right there, saying that if you visited me in prison, if you've clothed, visit the man in prison, if you clothe the man who's naked, if you feed the man who's hungry, if you give the man who's thirsty a drink. So if you do all these things for the least of these in this world, which is kind of the least in this world, you've done unto me. If you don't do them, you abandon them, you've abandoned me. That's pretty much what Jesus is saying. And which is also the fruits that he's talking about when you hear about in chapter 15 in John, verses 1 through 7, he's talking about fruits, and he's talking about, "I'm the true vine and you are the branches, and I want you to bear fruits, and if you're in me, then you will bear fruit, but you cannot bear fruit apart of me. So you have to remain in me." I love what he's talking about there. And also he's talking about in Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 20, you hear him talking about, you will know a tree by the fruit that they bear, that good trees cannot produce bad apples, bad fruit, and bad trees cannot produce good fruits. And these trees represent people, that if you are in me, then you're going to be bearing good fruit, and you'll be known by those fruits. For if you're a part of me, then you cannot produce good fruit apart of me. That's kind of, if you put John and Matthew together, you kind of get a pretty good idea of what he's talking about right there. And so, I mean, I love these passages, because these passages echo what Galatians chapter 5, verses 23 through 26 is talking about, where it says what the good fruits are, which, right here, but the fruits of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. The law is not against such things. So I love that. So the fruits that Christ wants us to bear are these things. A lot of times you hear the church preach, the fruits that you need to bear is the souls that you need to save. We don't save souls. We don't save souls. Even Christ says that all we do is we plant and we water. We don't save anybody. The Holy Spirit calls people to the Lord, and Jesus saves. Jesus has already saved. That's what Jesus or Yeshua means. Yahweh has saved. So I love that. We just give these fruits, which is love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and patience. All these things. We give patience to people. Which is what Matthew 22, 34 through 37 is talking about, the two greatest commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, soul, body, and strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. And you hear James says, if you're keeping this, you're keeping the law. The 10 commandments were summed up into 2 commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, soul, body, and strength. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Okay? So you got that. Love the Lord your God with all your mind, soul, body, and strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Then right here it's summed up into 1 commandment. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you do that, then you're loving God. Because how can you love someone who you cannot see if you can't love someone who you do see? And also, if you see right here, in Matthew, in Matthew chapter 25, when he says, and if you do unto the least of these, you've done unto me, Jesus is saying that exact thing. If you do these things, then you're loving your neighbor as you love yourself. And if you're loving your neighbor as you love yourself, you're loving me with all your mind, soul, body, and strength. So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. Yes, I have some more coming up after this, dealing with this topic. I'm going to end this one right here. I hope you enjoy these videos. If you do, please subscribe, like this one, and go back and watch the other ones if you haven't, and like those as well. And please share these with somebody. I'd like to get more subscribers, because this is something that needs to get out there, guys. And people need to be set free from legalism, from religion, from this self-centered, sin-centered mindset. And we need to rest in Jesus Christ and what Jesus Christ has done, and spread that to everybody else. So God bless you guys, and I'll see you later.